All right, so how can people set up a more efficient starting point for going back to the gym if their goal is to kind of improve body composition in the longer term?
Okay, so realistically, what we've got like 6 weeks until the gym open now. So we can set you up for a more efficient starting point. Now, to do that, if the goal is to gain muscle, then ideally, take build a muscle takes time, right?
Hmm.
So we want to have as much time as possible to be able to build muscle once we get back in the gym. Now, realistically, to be able to do that, you don't want to be starting from a too high of a body fat position. So, first of all, it's a little bit of a myth to say that you can't gain muscle when you do have too much body fat. It's not strictly true. But what it does mean is that, if you're trying to gain muscle, which realistically to do that, you need to be in a high energy environment, aka a calorie surplus, that's going to come with some inevitable fat gain, right?
Hmm.
So if you're starting from a too higher body fat position and you're inevitably getting some body fat, you're not really going to be able to gain muscle for very, very long. So let's say like you get back in the gym and you can gain muscle for like 3 months before realistically you need to do some sort of tidy up. You're not going to achieve that much in a 3 month period
Of course.
from a muscle gain perspective. So in order not to waste time and to really promote a longer period of gaining muscle, right now, the best thing you could probably do is to reduce your body fat levels. Um, so, it doesn't have to be, let's do a full on cut, but just do some sort of tidy up phase. Again, you've got 6 weeks so that when you get back in the gym, like I say, you can just push for a little bit longer, a little bit harder. Um,
Yeah, I think that's a good starting point. And I think obviously also kind of worth mentioning that, of course, a pretty significant amount of fat loss can be achieved in this small space of time
yeah,
comparative to kind of how much muscle one could gain in this amount of time if your goal is just to continue gaining into gyms, or obviously, as you mentioned, an actual efficient push-up phase when we're back into the gyms. Obviously, I think one of the reasons why people might be a little hesitant to pull something like this off is particularly in a lockdown environment where loading is limited, equipment in general is limited, is a lot of people might be kind of scared to potentially sacrifice some muscle mass by pulling off some sort of fat loss phase now, especially if it is a little more aggressive. But I think along with that, people should probably also consider how easy it really is to maintain muscle in even in an environment like this. Because I mean, in the worst case scenario, you can probably back me up on this because I've mentioned I don't kind of like using studies without citing them, and I will go find the study after this so I can kind of link it below wherever I put this up. But I believe I'm correct in saying that even a degree of aerobic activity can help in the maintenance of muscle mass if one is trying to diet down, and that's obviously looking at the worst possible case scenario. If we
yeah,
consider if we consider kind of volume thresholds and everything, then a real fraction of what is needed to build muscle is needed to just maintain it. So I think people certainly don't have to kind of stress too hard about potentially sacrificing muscle mass to kind of see through a bit of an aggressive or even just kind of a more steady fat loss phase for the time being.
Absolutely. And there's some really important things to take away from there, like some really important aspects which you can then apply in real life. So, first thing you said, there's an aerobic side to this. And absolutely, if you have a higher aerobic capacity, you have a better capacity to recover. And therefore, if you can recover better, it's easier to maintain your muscle, maybe even grow some muscle. Now, obviously, that's going to be limited by, the home training. But
Yeah.
there is an important point that, well, first of all, everyone can do some form of aerobic capacity. Everyone can go run outside, right? But after that, there's the important point of actually, yes, aerobic capacity or aerobic work does help with muscle retention, maybe muscle gain, but actually there is the flip side. And if you do too much, you can actually see an increase in oxidative stress, which actually can be negative for muscle gain as well. So yes, do your cardio, but no, don't do too much. The second thing, or the second point to take away there, is that you mentioned volume and maintaining muscle. I can't remember the exact stat, but it's something like you only need about 20% of your total volume to be able to maintain your muscle at home. So it's really not much at all. Again, that's very, very achievable for everyone. And then the last thing, and again, this is really important to remember, is if you do lose a bit of muscle, fortunately, we have this wonderful thing called muscle memory. So it's just going to come straight back in the gym. Literally, first 4 weeks, maybe potentially, you'll have all that muscle back that you lost in the first place. And then from there, you'll be getting very nicely anyway. So
new muscle. Yeah.
There is not really a worry in terms of muscle loss or anything like that. So bearing that in mind, that muscle loss isn't something you need to worry about. It should make you more confident to realize you can focus on fat loss for the next 6 weeks and then still create this more efficient start point when you get back in the gym. So again, to sum up, you're not actually that likely to lose your muscle because it's very easy to keep with a bit of aerobic work and just about 20% of your total volume. Don't do too much aerobic work though. And if you do lose a little bit, it's going to come straight back anyway. So it just makes sense based on all that to do a small tidy up phase now so you can push for longer, maybe a little bit harder when you get back into the gym.
Yeah, no, I think that was a really kind of good broad view and kind of assessing all the points and weighing it up. And I think that's something that people, maybe at first glance kind of think about, but then kind of not thinking kind of too in depth on each of those, don't actually, weigh things up as accurately and do kind of just consider, oh, well, calorie deficit, yeah, it might create a better starting point for the gym, but I might lose muscle. And yeah, but when you kind of start to consider all those points, for a lot of people, that may be kind of the smartest way to go about the current situation.
Absolutely.
But that being, I don't know.
I'll let you carry on. Okay.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, go on.
It's for you. It's for you. You kept talking. Keep talking.
Yeah, well, the one thing I was going to mention is obviously something which we've kind of planned to discuss after this is obviously efficient starting points for fat loss. So obviously it is worth kind of noting that for some people, it may actually not be the smartest decision to kind of embark on a fat loss phase if you are not properly primed for it. So consider your own kind of circumstances at the moment and kind of what position you are in terms of kind of your food intake and everything already, and if that is kind of the smartest approach for you. But if you are in a position where you kind of have still kind of remained kind of active and still kind of training a bit through lockdown and stuff, and you are in a decent position, to not do much damage to yourself by, losing fat, then this can hopefully look at kind of the longer term of going back to the gym and being in a good position to gain muscle.
And actually what you just said kind of helps what I was going to say anyway, because what I was really going to say is that if you think, if again, losing a little bit of muscle or whatever isn't worth it going back to the gym, well, you can view it as like, okay, you might lose a little bit of time in terms of being able to gain muscle because you've lost a bit and you have to get that back. But it's not about the time that you might lose. It's about the time that you're going to gain from doing all this stuff in the first place. And that time you gain far, far outweighs that time you might lose. And that's so important to remember. And then even referring to your point there of like, are you in an efficient starting point for a fat loss phase? Well, even if you're not, that time you've got to lose to get into that efficient start point, it's just going to add that much more time, valuable time. And then, you don't just gain time, but you gain efficiency of the process as well, which saves time. So overall, you make this massive gain. So it just makes sense to do these things, which might feel like they're setting you back a little bit, but in the long run, really set you up to have a much more efficient and better process.
Yeah, definitely. I think kind of one last thing which I want to sort of touch on is going back to the stat that you mentioned on the 20% volume to kind of be able to maintain your gains. I think that's a really good one to touch on. I think 20% was a number that one rings a bell in my head. I think what's really worth kind of noting about that is if we consider how low we can kind of take effective volume and still reap benefits for hypertrophy and still facilitate some muscle gain, then consider how low in terms of effective volume we can really kind of push things if we're not even really trying to grow, and in the worst case scenario we're just kind of looking to maintain. That is really from kind of a total workload point of view, that is really a small amount that you need to just maintain your muscle mass. So I think there really is like pretty much no risk of losing significant amounts of muscle during this time period.
And again, that brings up another really valuable point, is that if we look, so this is another conversation we're going to have, but if we look at, like, say, your current home training, to get that effective volume, a big part of that comes from effective quality of reps, right? So again, we're in a really good spot now in terms of home training to improve our quality of reps, because again, that's just going to improve that, the actual volume that you need, like good quality volume that you need. But what that also is going to translate to is when you get back in the gym, again, if you have more effective reps now, then when you get in the gym and you can load, actually put some weight in the bar, you're still going to have these effective reps or these effective movement patterns ingrained. And therefore, again, the quality of your sets, the quality of your sessions are just going to go up. And that just means more muscle gain. So, it's just this time you have now, you could be used so well and so effectively to better set you up for the gym. And it really doesn't even take that much effort. Again, put a good focus on form. If you need to lose a little bit of body fat, and you've got 6 weeks to do that, very achievable, very easy, nothing too hard. It's something that, the majority of people can do, and it just makes sense.
Yeah, definitely makes things much more efficient in the long term. And that's obviously something that we kind of continuously preach, thinking kind of the long term. So
yeah,
I think that covers that. I think that covers that nicely.